Good evening, America. Tonight, we do not speak merely of war abroad, but of a war waged quietly within the walls of your own republic. A war fought not with rifles, but with rumors. Not with bombs, but with blacklists. Not against spies proven guilty, but against citizens suspected of being different. Tonight, we speak of the Lavender Scare. A campaign of paranoia and persecution that unfolded in the shadows of the so-called Red Scare. A chapter of American history where fear was forged into policy, and identity itself became evidence. You know the names of the famous hunts. You know of Senator Joseph McCarthy and the anti-communist crusades of the 1940s and 1950s. You know of hearings, accusations, ruined careers, and whispered allegations of subversion. But buried beneath the scarlet banner of anti-communism was another purge, quieter, crueler, more personal. The government called homosexuals security risks. The newspapers called them deviants. The state called them vulnerable to blackmail. And so began a systematic campaign to remove thousands of gay men and lesbians from the federal government. Not because they had betrayed the nation, but because the nation had decided they were unacceptable. The term Lavender Scare was later popularized by historian David K. Johnson, but the machinery itself began decades earlier. To understand it, one must first understand the climate of fear after the Second World War. The year, 1947. The Cold War had begun. The United States and the Soviet Union stood poised in ideological hostility. Communism became the specter haunting every institution. President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9835 in March of 1947, the Loyalty Order. Its purpose? To investigate federal employees for suspected disloyalty. At first, the target was communism, but fear is a greedy thing. It rarely remains confined to its original victim. Soon, homosexuality became folded into the same machinery of suspicion. The argument was deceptively simple. If homosexuality was considered shameful, and if shame could be exploited, then homosexual employees could theoretically be blackmailed by foreign agents. Therefore, according to the logic of the state, homosexuals represented a threat to national security. Notice the sleight of hand. The danger was not that these citizens had committed espionage. The danger was that society's own persecution made them vulnerable. The state created the stigma, then punished the victims for carrying it. Voila. The perfect closed loop of institutional hypocrisy. And then came the year 1950. The year the fire truly spread. On February 9th, Senator Joseph McCarthy claimed he possessed a list of communists working within the State Department. The nation erupted into panic. And amid this frenzy, another senator entered the stage. Kenneth Wary of Nebraska declared, "You can hardly separate homosexuals from subversives." Well, there it was. The merger. The scarlet and the lavender fused into one grand paranoia. Soon after, a Senate investigation was launched specifically targeting homosexuals in government. The report bore a chilling title, Employment of Homosexuals and Other Sex Perverts in Government. Read that title carefully. Not citizens, not Americans. Sex perverts. Language is always the first weapon of dehumanization. The report concluded that homosexuals were morally weak, unstable, and security risks. No evidence was required beyond suspicion. No crime needed proving. A whisper became enough. A rumor became enough. A glance, a gesture, an accusation. Enough. Federal agencies began purging employees en masse. The State Department, the military, intelligence agencies, civil service offices. Thousands lost careers. Thousands more lived in terror. Interrogations became common. Investigators asked invasive questions about private lives, friendships, mannerisms, bars visited, letters written, apartments entered. People were followed, watched, entrapped. Some were pressured into naming others. Sound familiar? Fear always demands collaborators. By 1953, the campaign intensified further under President Dwight D. Eisenhower. He signed Executive Order 10450. This order explicitly barred homosexuals from federal employment by labeling them security risks. Think carefully about what this meant. The United States government formally declared an entire category of citizens inherently suspect. Not because of actions, because of identity. The Federal Bureau of Investigation under J. Edgar Hoover participated heavily in surveillance and investigations during this era. Hoover himself maintained vast files on suspected homosexuals. Ironically, rumors would persist for decades concerning Hoover's own private life. A bitter reminder of how systems of repression often consume even those who sustain them. And what did this machinery produce? Did it save democracy? Did it preserve liberty? Or did it merely teach generations of Americans to fear one another? To hide? To lie? To perform acceptable identities beneath the fluorescent lights of conformity? Lives were shattered. Careers evaporated overnight. Some individuals died by suicide. Others disappeared into silence. Many entered sham marriages simply to survive. Entire lives became performances designed to appease suspicion. And all the while, the Republic proclaimed itself the land of freedom. Ah yes, freedom. That magnificent word governments adore engraving into monuments while quietly suffocating it behind closed doors. But history has a peculiar habit. The truths buried deepest often return the loudest. Resistance emerged. In 1950, amid the height of the panic, activist Harry Hay helped found the Mattachine Society, one of the earliest gay rights organizations in the United States. In 1955, Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon co-founded the Daughters of Belita's Small Beginnings. Dangerous beginnings, because every system of fear relies upon one essential ingredient: silence. And once people cease to remain silent, the machinery trembles. Then came June of 1969. Stonewall riots, New York City. The Stonewall Inn police raids against gay establishments had become routine. Humiliation had become routine. Harassment had become routine. But this time, the people fought back. For several nights, protests and clashes erupted, and the modern LGBTQ rights movement surged into public consciousness with a force the establishment could no longer easily suppress. Yet even after Stonewall, remnants of the Lavender Scare persisted. Federal employment restrictions lingered for decades. The ban would not fully collapse until later court decisions and policy reversals reshaped the system. In 1995, the U.S. government formally acknowledged some of the injustices committed during the era. But apologies do not resurrect stolen lives. They do not restore lost decades. They do not erase fear from memory. So what does the Lavender Scare teach us now? That fear is endlessly adaptable. That governments under pressure often seek internal enemies. That labels can become shackles. That morality can be weaponized. And perhaps most importantly, that citizens are often persuaded to surrender liberty not through force alone, but through panic. Because frightened populations will frequently applaud the very machinery that may one day turn upon them. Today, the targets may change, the rhetoric may evolve, the slogans may modernize, but the mechanism remains hauntingly familiar. Find a vulnerable minority, portray them as dangerous, convince the public they threaten children, morality, security, or national survival. Then expand surveillance, expand authority, expand suspicion. History does not repeat itself perfectly, but it rhymes with terrifying precision. And so I ask you, when future generations study your era, will they say you defended freedom, or merely defended the comfort of conformity? Will they remember courage or compliance? Because the measure of a free society is not how it treats the popular, but how it treats the inconvenient, the feared, the different, the despised. Remember that fear is the oldest mask power has ever worn. Good evening, and good luck.